In this video, we're going to cover the top 15 scales that guitar players gotta know in the order that you should learn them. I really think there's only 15 scales that separate an absolute beginner and a professional guitarist. That said, learning these scales is quick and easy, however mastering them takes a lifetime. But you gotta start somewhere, so let's begin. Alright, for those of you who just want the list and nothing else, I'm going to put that on the screen now, and if that's all you were here for, thank you for watching. For the rest of us who want a little bit more explanation, let me tell you what you're going to get out of this video. We're going to go through each of those scales and I'm going to show you guys the proper way to play it, and then I'm going to give you a brief explanation, just enough to be an intro to the scale and sort of explain the order of this list. This video isn't meant to be a comprehensive masterclass on every single one of these scales. I just want to bring you out of the dark on these topics so that you come away from this with a list of stuff that you can do deep dives on at your own pace. And if you like my style of explaining stuff, then the deep dives that I've made on these scales so far will be linked in the description. But anyway, let's get started with the first scale that you should learn on guitar, which is the minor pentatonic scale. To play the minor pentatonic scale, we're going to take our first finger and put it on the 5th fret of the low E string. Then we're going to take our 4th finger and put it on the 8th fret of the low E string. Then on the A string, it's frets 5 and 7. On the D string, 5, 7. G string, 5, 7. On the B string, 5, 8. And on the high E string, 5, 8. The thing to point out here is that this scale shape, along with every other scale shape that we're going to talk about today, is movable. So we just arbitrarily started on the 5th fret. That note is A, so this happened to be the A minor pentatonic scale that we just played. But we could have started anywhere. If we started on G, for example, it would be the G minor pentatonic scale, so long as the relationships between our fingers, what some players call the shape, stays the same. And this works all over the fretboard. And again, that will hold true for every scale shape we talk about today. So that's how you play the minor pentatonic scale. And I know all the memes about how this is baby's first guitar scale or whatever, but seriously, this is the perfect place to start. The big thing to point out here is knowing this one will allow you to start jamming in minor keys and recognizing when other guitar players are using this scale. But once you got it down, you should move on to the second scale that every guitar player should learn, which is the major pentatonic scale. Same deal as before, I'm going to demonstrate it and then briefly explain it, and if you want the in-depth lesson, that'll be linked. To play the major pentatonic scale, we're going to take our 2nd finger and put it on the 5th fret of the low E string. Then our 4th finger is going to go on the 7th fret. Then over on the A string, our 1st finger is going to hit the 4th fret, and then our 4th finger is going to hit the 7th fret. The D string is going to be 4, 7. And then the G string is going to be 4, 6. And then you're going to do a small shift so that your next notes are the 5th fret and the 7th fret of the B string played with your 1st and 3rd finger. And then same thing, 5, 7 with your 1st and 3rd finger on the high E string. So the whole scale is this. And again, just like the minor pentatonic scale, the major pentatonic scale is movable. Every scale we're talking about today is movable. The thing that I want you to see about the major pentatonic scale is that it's actually connected to the minor pentatonic scale that we just learned. So if we put the minor pentatonic scale and we put it here on F sharp, so we have the F sharp minor pentatonic scale. If you look at the second note that you play on each string there, you'll actually notice that it looks a lot like the first note that you play on each string for the major pentatonic scale. So these two scale shapes kind of like lock into each other. So if you're in the key of F sharp minor and you're trying to come up with a cool guitar solo using the F sharp minor pentatonic scale, you're not just confined to that scale. You can actually also jump up here to the A major pentatonic scale. Because again, those two scales are connected. Scales 3 and 4 on this list are the major and minor scales, and I'm going to throw both of these scales at you at the same time. Notice I didn't say major pentatonic and minor pentatonic, I just said major and minor. Let's talk about how to play them. Okay, before I show you guys how to play the major scale and the minor scale, I want to let you know I'm going to stop calling out fret numbers here. I find that early beginners really benefit from that, which is why I did it for the first 2 pentatonic scales. But at this point, you should really be grasping the idea that scales are movable, and I don't want there to be any confusion as to whether or not I'm referring to fingers or to frets. So I'm just going to silently play through the scale, and if you want absolute clarification on the notes, just check out the tabs. Anyway, here's the major scale, and again, I'm just arbitrarily putting my root on the note A. And now the minor scale. quick, if you look at the tabs, you might notice that on the high E string, there's a couple of extra notes that I'm not playing when I play through the scale. The reason for that is I'm playing a 2-octave scale here, and whenever you play a scale in an octave, you should start and end on a root note, and neither of those two notes are a root note. Knowing that those notes are there are important for music creation and for understanding some music theory stuff, but you wouldn't play them if you're just practicing like this. I bring that up because you're going to notice extra notes like that in pretty much every scale we talk about from here on out. And again, just like the minor pentatonic and major pentatonic scales are connected, the minor and major scales are connected. They kind of snap together in the same way. So that's how you play the major scale and the minor scale. The thing you should notice right off the bat is that these two scales both have more notes than their pentatonic counterparts we talked about before. This is because these are technically what's called diatonic scales, meaning they have 7 notes per 1 octave instead of pentatonic scales which only have 5 notes per 1 octave. If you have absolutely no idea what I just said, check out the deep dive on the minor pentatonic scale that's linked in the description. Also, one of the weird quirks of music, and this is frustrating, I know, don't blame me, but when we're talking about a diatonic scale, we don't say that. You just say major scale, and we assume it to be a diatonic scale. You only specify the number of notes that are in the scale when it's not a diatonic scale, like we do in the major pentatonic scale, for example. Blame the music gods. Okay, so we started this video with a couple of pentatonic scales to get you up and running, and then we filled in some gaps in your knowledge with a couple of diatonic scale shapes. The one thing you still can't do is play across the entire fretboard. You can move the scale shapes you know around, but you have to change the key to do that, so you're still really limited. The next 2 sections of this video are going to teach you the scale shapes you need to know in order to play across the entire fretboard. First, from a pentatonic perspective, and then second, from a diatonic perspective. So across the entire fretboard, there are 5 total pentatonic scale positions. You already know 2 of them. The first is the minor pentatonic scale, which is also known as position 1. Then there's the major pentatonic scale, which is also known as position 2. Then there's position 3. This is one of the new ones. Then there's position 4. Then there's position 5. And after that, you actually get back to position 1. I played them in order so you can see how they connect together. It's basically the same principle as just how positions 1 and 2 connect together. So that's how you can play the pentatonic scale across the entire fretboard using 5 shapes. Next, I'm going to throw a lot of scale shapes at you again, and this time we're going to learn how to play the diatonic scales, the major scale, in 7 different positions across the entire fretboard. It's kind of the same idea as what we just did, only from a diatonic perspective. I want to go ahead and reiterate that I know that trying to watch this video and learn all these scales feels like trying to drink from a fire hose. The purpose of this video is to give you a list that you can research on your own, alright? The content in this video is not meant to be learned all in one sitting. Anyway, on to a bunch of positions of diatonic scales. So across the entire fretboard, there are 7 total diatonic scale positions. Only the diatonic scale, the major scale, same thing, is the thinking man's scale. So we don't just call them positions, we call them modes. The first one you know already, it's just the major scale, only now we're going to call it the Ionian mode. And also, all the modes are going to connect together, so look for that as I'm playing through them. The next one, which is a new one, is called the Dorian mode. Next, another new one is called the Phrygian mode. Then the Lydian mode. Then we have the Mixolydian mode. Then we have the Aeolian mode, which is just the minor scale that you learned before. And finally, we have the Locrian mode. I'm running out of camera frame at the top of the fretboard here, so I'm going to play it close to the headstock, but understand that I could play it up here to continue our climb upward. Anyway, here's the Locrian mode. And then we restart back at the major scale, the Ionian mode. So that's how you play across the entire fretboard using the 7 diatonic modes. You'll notice that after we renamed some of the scales that we had learned previously, we're currently sitting at 12 unique scale positions, 5 pentatonic and 7 diatonic. I want to make a quick note about the order that I've recommended learning scales on this list. You know, we started off with some pentatonic scales just to get you up and off the ground, then some diatonic scales so that you wouldn't be totally lost before we fill in the rest of the pentatonic scales, and then did the same thing for the diatonic scales. That's not like the properly enumerated way to learn. That's just an order that I've seen a lot of people have success with. From my perspective as your guitar mom, if you don't count being creative and learning how to use the scales, if we're just talking about the rote memorization of the scale shapes, from the moment you pick up a guitar, it's really just a race to get you to this point where you know these 12 shapes, where you can play across the whole fretboard. I just recommend this order because I think it's effective. You know, you get introduced to pentatonics and then diatonics, and then we kind of fill in the rest. But what comes after you know all this stuff? Scales 13 and 14 are going to be the harmonic minor scale and the melodic minor scale. These are really advanced scales, all right? And the truth is, if you've learned anything new in this video so far, just trust me that these are the next 2 scales that you should learn. Now, I don't want to mind melt 95% of everybody watching this video, so if you're a very advanced player and you actually want the explanation, get ready to pause because I'm going to put it on the screen now. And we're going to speed through this demonstration. Here's the harmonic minor scale. And here's the melodic minor scale. Alright, the final scale, scale 15. Here, I don't have a specific recommendation. That's for 2 reasons. Number 1 is there's no longer any scales that I think are in a good order that all guitarists should learn. To learn more scales at this point should be very genre specific to the genre that you're interested in. So if you're into jazz, for example, maybe you should learn some of the modes of the harmonic and melodic minor scales. Maybe you're into prog rock and you should learn some like really weird sounding Eastern scales. I just want this spot on the list to be a placeholder for whatever advanced exotic scale is next on your specific learning progression. The other reason I put a 15th spot on this list is because the number 15 looks a lot better in the title of this video than the number 14. To be clear, that is textbook clickbait. But if you're still watching the video at this point, you probably learned something. So please don't hate me. Or do hate me. I lied. I'm a villain. Anyway, I hope you guys learned something, and as always, thank you for watching.